How are you doing? Welcome to another episode of Valet Stories. I wanted to give a shout out to Peter Lemongello for this recommendation because on this episode we're going to be discussing different incidents we've had with drunk customers over the years. Now, the first one I'm actually going to give my personal story. There was a story where I valet parked again for 12 years and a customer came in and he parked his car, everything was fine. What happened, it started raining really badly, like torrential downpour. And we try to wear raincoats as much as possible. We try to have towels. We have little tents also. But at a certain point, when you're outside, they're kind of rendered useless when the rain is coming sideways. So the customers are coming in. They're still needing their cars to be parked. So we would park the cars and then we double stack them and the cars were really close. I try to dry off as much as possible, but this customer came out and I believe he had a Mazda, just to let you know how long ago, 626. And he didn't want me getting in his car wet. And I told him, what do you expect me to do? I can't fly to your car. I have to run through the rain. Even if there's a tent, you're going to get wet at some point or another. So he's like, no, I want to get the car out myself. But truthfully, he couldn't because the cars were so close together, valet style. So mainly only a valet could get into him, and the guy was, I hate to say it, too big to get in between the cars to get him out. Anyway, the owner or the manager, I can't remember which one, came running out because he saw that we were getting into a fight, and this guy was extremely drunk and getting really belligerent. So the owner, soaking wet, went and got the car himself and pulled it out. But that was a big avoidance because up until that point, the guy was really starting to get ready to poke me in my chest. And I'm usually the most laid back person, but if you physically start touching me, we're going to start fighting. So the owner saw that, he came out, he diffused the situation, he was able to pull that out, and that was one of our first incidents that we've had with drunk customers that I have to realize that sometimes you got to be as patient as possible and try to defuse the situation. We didn't get in a fight, luckily, but this was a big story. The owner had to talk with me afterwards and told me that I had to learn how to kind of keep my cool and make sure I don't let people get me to that point again. And I 100% agree. Now, this next story is actually kind of similar, except the only difference is it did end up in a fight. One of my valets, a really nice guy, but he's a big guy. He's probably about 6'3", probably weighs 200 plus pounds, but he has a baby face. And he's actually the nicest guy, very well educated, everything like that. But a customer came and again tried to swing on him for whatever reason that happened. Valet parking, wanted to pull the car up, didn't do it and whatever. It wasn't raining, but it was a whole bunch of drunk customers. There was probably 3 or 4 of them. And he swung at my valet. My valet went back, missed it, but hit him. When he hit him, the guy fell back. You would think that's the end of it, but no, because when he fell back, the guy broke his leg. Because he was drunk, he stumbled and broke his leg. Paramedics come out, the police come out, and they arrest my valet. My valet gets arrested for assault at that point. He tried to show that the guy swung on him first, but they didn't believe it. So he went to jail. We had to bail him out. I think the bail was like, $2,500. But we were able to get him out, and we were able to then go over to, there was a liquor store, not a liquor store, but a convenience store that had a video camera. And the video camera showed that the customer did try to strike my valet first, and that, based on that, we were able to exonerate ourselves from that case. The valet ended up quitting after the court case because he no longer wanted to do this industry. He didn't want to be exposed to that. He didn't want to allow himself to get to that point again. And also at the same time, he moved back to Washington, D.C. His schooling was near over anyway, so he just moved back to D.C. And honestly, I haven't heard back from him again, but that is a crazy story. A really crazy story. The next story we have a nightclub that we work at, and it gets pretty crazy. It was the #1 nightclub in Atlanta for years, and over time, everybody's in there. And what the bouncers would do, if anybody's drunk, they kick them out. Well, we saw this one girl one time, and honestly, she was a beautiful girl. But the only thing that was kind of weird about it was she was cross-eyed. And I'm thinking to myself, God, this girl's gorgeous, but she's cross-eyed. And I know that's mean to say, but honestly, that's what we were thinking. Like, we can't believe how beautiful this girl is, but she was literally cross-eyed. Anyway, the bouncers just kind of put her on the side and just let her sober up on some chairs or on the curb or something like that. And a couple of hours later, we're just doing our job and everything, and we'd occasionally see her. People would try to go by and talk to her, and the bouncers, even though they kicked her out the club, they were still watching over her to the point where, hey, don't mess with her unless you truly know her. So a couple of hours later, she would get back in line and try to go back in the club as if they don't recognize who she is. So she'd get back in line, try to get back in the club, and they put her back on the curb. Probably, we would start this shift at probably about 10 o'clock at night and go until about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And at probably about 3 in the morning, we look over at her and her eyes are straight again. We're like, what? Are you kidding me? I swear, did you see it too? We saw this girl was cross-eyed at like 10 or 11 in the morning. At 11 in the evening, but now at 2 or 3 in the morning, her eyes were straight. So I've never seen anybody so drunk that they were cross-eyed. And I feel bad about it, but we later learned that the same functions that deal with alcohol deal with muscle control in your eyes. And those eye muscles start getting lazy, and therefore you start getting cross-eyed. But when you sober up, boom, they start going straight again. So we couldn't believe it. That was one of the weirdest stories or weirdest situations we've ever seen, but I've heard the rumor. That was the first time actually seeing it. Now, this next story is actually one of our favorites. It's by far one of my favorites in the office, and we discuss it all the time. This story involves Courtney. It involves that nightclub I was just talking about, and of course it involves alcohol. Now, Courtney was working, and basically we worked these shifts again from about 9 o'clock at night until about 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning. And a bouncer came out and kicked a girl out of the club. She sat on the curb, and it was that same situation where she's sitting on the curb and people come by and say, hey girl, can we talk to you? And the bouncer's like, leave her alone, she's drunk, leave her alone. So Courtney had her there on the curb, and we kind of keep an eye, because our VIP lot is right next to the entrance of the club. So he would kind of keep an eye on the girl on the side, because he's a real caring guy. He has a kid, a daughter, so he doesn't want anybody else's situation to be like this the same. So he would look out for the girl and make sure everything was okay, but he's also doing his job at the same time. Now it gets to 2 o'clock in the morning. 2 o'clock, they stop serving alcohol inside the club. Then they give you another hour to basically wind out of the club. So at 3 o'clock, pretty much everything is finished. They put the equipment away and go. So it's now 3 o'clock in the morning, and Courtney still sees this girl is on the curb. It gets to about 3:30, and we have police officers, Atlanta police officers, that actually act as security. So Courtney's like, hey, this girl is still here. She's kind of still passed out. What should we do? And Courtney tells me this, and still to this day, he's like, this pissed him off. The cop said to Courtney, looks like tonight's going to be your lucky night. And he left. And Courtney couldn't believe it. Courtney was pissed. So he called his wife, and he's like, this is a situation. This girl is drunk. I think what happened, her girlfriends thought when she got kicked out the club, she went home. She didn't have a cell phone. She didn't have anything on her. And her girlfriends left, assuming she was gone already. So they left her here. And it's now 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, not in the best area in Atlanta, and she's on the curb. So he calls the wife. He's like, what should we do? He's like, I don't want to bring her home. I don't want to get in trouble. And honestly, Courtney's like a 6'2" African-American guy. He doesn't want to be caught with a petite, young Caucasian girl. So he's like, what should I do? He's like, okay, I'm going to come down there and meet you there. We're going to take this girl to the Waffle House. Waffle House, if you haven't heard about it, it's 24 hours. That's the after party place to go to. So he picks her up, takes her, they go to the Waffle House together, and this girl is still drunk as you can believe. You would not, she couldn't talk, she didn't know anything. So they get to Waffle House, they start giving her coffee. After an hour, she starts coming to a little bit, and she knows her name, and she finally finds a phone number of one of her girlfriends that she couldn't remember. And they called her, and they couldn't believe that she wasn't at home and that they left her at the club. So within 30 minutes, they came down, picked her up, and that was on their way. But kudos to Courtney for sure, and his wife, of course, for definitely helping this girl out in this situation, because honestly, if he left her, it could have turned out really bad. So if you like these stories, let me know. These are some of the crazy ones that we've dealt with. Again, thank you, Peter, for the suggestion. These actually give me ideas. They jog my brain, and I'm like, oh, look at these stories, and I can just start pulling stories out the blue. But these are all true stories that have happened over the years, and trust me, there's a lot more.